Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody, and welcome to this new Next Atlas webinar. A couple of months ago, we discovered together the Meta Shopper in the last of our webinars. It was of March, and twice a year we have a webinar that is dedicated to a wider topic that encompasses many different industries. Today, on the other hand, we are focusing on a more specific subject, dealing with industries that are particularly relevant for us: food and beverage, health, and other ones that are slightly touched in this webinar. Feeding the brain means that we noticed and through our data that there's a lot of attention that is rising towards mental well-being. And food is one of the elements that we saw that is particularly relevant when it comes to find measures to improve your capabilities and also improve your health from both a physical and mental way. I am Eric Giordano, and I'm Head of Business Development for Italy for Next Atlas. Together with me, Samir Katkadi.
Hi, everyone. I'm Samir. I'm a trend and data analyst here at Next Atlas. So I work with the team that translates the data from our AI into intelligible and actionable insights and trends.
And so Samir today will guide us through this quick trip into feeding the brain. And all the elements, all the analysis, the data, the trends and insights that you will find today that we will present emerge from the analysis that we do on Next Atlas that starts from more than 300,000 early adopters at global level, that our artificial intelligence scouts to discover what will be relevant in the next months in terms of lifestyles, in terms of needs, tastes, desires. And so it's a way to anticipate the future, of course, for brands and agencies that use Next Atlas to boost and to prepare for the next strategies. But let's dive directly into today's topic. So I leave the room to Samir to guide us into today's journey. What's the menu today?
Thanks, Eric. So yeah, I'll be guiding us for the next 20 odd minutes. And just to give you all an idea of what we'll be looking at in that time, we'll start by quickly exploring some of the recent evolutions shaping how people are eating and also the choices they're making in their dietary behaviors. Then we'll kind of get into the crux of today's journey and looking at the various aspects and the emerging trends that are driving this new connection between food and the mind. And then lastly, we'll leave you with some quick tips that you can take home and hopefully translate into your own researches, innovations, and strategies. So to start, we want to kind of set the table, so to speak, and unravel some of the evolutions we've been seeing in food culture in recent times. Obviously, there's been a lot of shifts in food adjacent behavior and habits recently, but there's a few that really stand out apart from the rest and also set the stage for a lot of what we'll be talking about today. So the first thing we saw was a drastic shift in the way that people are approaching dieting. Rather than strict and rigid adherence, we're seeing people trust their gut a little more and give themselves freedom and space to enjoy their diets through flexitarian dieting and mindful eating, which has led to a really strong growth in intuitive eating and other free-form diets. In spite of this freedom, though, nutrition remains as a primary concern for most eaters. So our increased focus on health has also led to a more pronounced and proactive search for functional wellness in our food. And more than the blanket superfoods of yore, this iteration is really rooted in finding dishes and ingredients that carry specific, almost medicinal benefits. And this targeted quest has led to a meteoric rise in interest in nutraceuticals, which is kind of a marriage between nutrition and medicine. And lastly, our preferences regarding the way we eat have shifted as well. So the rise of snacking and fun, ultra quick meals has been resounding as people have translated their flexible lifestyles into a need for more versatile meals. And in turn, our AI has picked up on unmistakable growth in snack culture. So together, these three factors combine to create quite a unique jumping off point for the future of the industry. We're seeing foodies adopt flexible and versatile approaches in their eating habits in service of very targeted health benefits that don't sacrifice on taste or enjoyment. And this leads us right into the core of today's webinar, as we'll be diving into one of the biggest and most engaging one of these health pursuits, improved mental well-being and function. So the first trend we want to explore in relation to this emerging connection between food and the mind is called mood food, which details how food's definition of mental well-being is itself changing. There's now kind of a shift away from looking at how food can serve in a more clinical and medicinal kind of setting in mental health, and more focus on how ingredients and formats can invoke specific moods as a path to better emotional health, whether that be through tranquility and relaxation, or also through joy and vitality. And if we dive a little deeper into this trend, we'll see really steady growth over the last few years, and especially a high resonance with younger generations like millennials and Gen Z. And then looking at the main tags to the left, there's also quite a variety of interests in ranging from libido to longevity and anxiety relief. Additionally, there's some really unique ingredients in this space, namely adaptogens, which are naturally occurring herbs that enhance human resilience to stressors by manipulating cortisol production in the body. In line with this reorientation, there's been a lot of buzz about a new category of drinks that we're calling euphoric beverages. And these drinks offer kind of a mood boosting effect for drinkers through the use of these adaptogens and a host of other natural and botanical ingredients. Rockstar's new Rockstar Unplugged line dives right into this space by shifting away from the traditional energy jolt of their flagship Rockstar energy drink, and instead focusing more on good vibes for any occasion through the use of hemp seed oil and B vitamins. The line is also joining MTV to revive the MTV Unplugged series, further highlighting the focus on a stress-free and enjoyable mood at the core of the product. Another adjacent category is the thriving non-alcoholic sector, which has recently pivoted to providing functional mood-centric tilts made for social settings. This direction has been especially popular among young drinkers who are open to exploring mocktails without sacrificing the conviviality of drinking culture and all the sociability that comes with the traditional experience. To wit, Desoy, which is a range of new non-alcoholic aperitifs, is focused on fueling feel-good and mood-boosting effects through the use of a range of natural adaptogens and botanicals, and recipes that are crafted by renowned ethnobotanists. The brand was co-founded by Katy Perry, and they're committed to making delicious drinks that can accentuate both social and personal well-being at the same time. So really playing into that idea of, providing these healthy benefits without giving up on the sociability that usually comes with alcoholic drinks. So while mood has become really central to this food-mind connection, more pragmatic benefits are still extremely relevant. And our next trend, Cognition Rewiring, deals with just that. There's been a market desire for increased mental performance, with people searching for ways to improve their concentration, mental acuity, and even their capacity for learning. And in this charge for improved cognitive performance, the food and beverage industry is emerging as a go-to source for solutions. And as we can see, if we dive a little deeper into the trend, despite a small dip in interest several months ago, its interest is really picking back up recently. And looking at the tags on the left again, we see a pretty interesting range of ingredients and compounds that are being referenced in this trend. So a couple of things to draw your attention to. Nootropics is a range of active ingredients that promote blood circulation and neurotransmitter release in the brain, which is thought to help stimulate better cognitive function. You'll also see a range of so-called smart drugs and psychedelics, which leads us directly into the first insight here. Psychedelics especially are really growing precipitously among people trying to optimize their mental capacity. And while the connection between these substances and the brain is nothing particularly new, it is really emerging from out of the underground context and getting a really strong hold over well-known brands and public consciousness in a particularly striking manner. Case in point, Psychedelic Water, which is an upstart beverage brand which uses kava, which is a mildly psychoactive compound that's been approved by the FDA, offers drinkers a path to an elevated state of mind. And just recently, the brand was actually picked up for national distribution by retailer and millennial mainstay Urban Outfitters. So there's a suggestion that there's a really serious interest here in these psychedelic ingredients beyond just the fringes of the public. Critically, this desire for enhanced mental function arises in a number of unique lifestyle contexts. So aside from more obvious settings like the workplace or studying for an exam, gaming has emerged as a super frequent situation where people are clamoring for focus and performance and a clear, responsive mind so that they can, power through these intense gaming sessions. And the gaming industry has absolutely taken notice of this. So much so that XPG, as a Chinese manufacturer of high-performance gaming hardware, has actually entered the supplement space now and launched their very own gaming supplement called XPG Gamer Boost. The supplement's packed with nootropics that claim to push your gaming to the next level at a rapid pace. And much of the messaging is very, very focused on improving reflexes and coordination and response times and things that are extremely relevant to a gaming specific audience. So we've now kind of seen how consumers are using food to focus on the mind. But interesting on the other side of the coin is how the food industry is leveraging the inner workings of the human brain to ramp up their own impact, influence, and engagement on their audience. And this brings us to the last trend today, augmented food experience. As new digital media platforms have emerged and kind of taken hold of the attention and imagination of digital natives, the food and beverage sector is finding new ways to burrow into our minds in order to highlight and augment our relationship with food culture. And looking at the data here, this trend has really picked up in the last couple of years. And it's become especially popular with young consumers who are well-versed and spend a lot of time in these immersive virtual and digital ecosystems and have an openness to diving headfirst into online cultures and communities and getting really deeply engaged with the viral content that they find there and spreading it around and kind of obsessing and following these things to their end, basically. And one of the foremost social media platforms of the moment, TikTok, is no stranger to this move. In fact, it's basically become the primary home base for a new wave of food-centered content creators, shaping any number of viral food trends in the last years with kind of a new, unpolished, and very real style. And this power has become so strong and pervasive over its audience that TikTok is actually capitalizing on their bounty of viral food trends by launching TikTok Kitchens, which is a series of ghost kitchens that will be delivering all the dishes that have invaded our brains over the last year, from whipped coffee to feta pasta and many, many more. The service plans to launch later this year, and it promises to be quite successful as people who have spent hours and hours obsessing over videos and trying to recreate these recipes at home will now have easy access to high quality versions that they can order for themselves. On the flip side, rather than propping up viral food creators and their content, a number of brands in the industry, specifically fast food chains we're seeing, are inviting co-creation with celebrities from outside the food culture on guest meals and guest menus in order to bring their obsessive fan bases into the fold. And unsurprisingly, this has been extremely popular among young audiences who gravitate to their favorite celebrities and anything that they touch. A great example of this is the healthy fast food chain Healthy Color, which actually goes one step further than collaborative menu items. Founded by a triumvirate of big names in Italy, in musicians Fede Basta, footballer Andrea Pettiana, and designer Marcello Berlone, the chain's entire identity is connected to the vibrant personalities of its founders. From colorful dishes to striking aesthetics in the restaurants, the chain has seen a swell of success at their recently launched Rome and Milan locations, leading to plans for a nationwide expansion later this year. And this kind of brings us to the final wrap up for today. So we've seen the numerous ways that people are using food to manipulate their brain and vice versa. But we'd like to leave you with some simple tips that lie at the core of what we've been talking about so that you can use what you've seen here today in your own work. So first, consider that mental well-being is now extending to mood, and therefore it'll be critical for brands to think beyond our traditional conception of mental health and try to foster good vibes through both new and natural ingredients as well as creative formats. Secondly, understand that situation is really important for people that are seeking out cognitive performance. So finding ways to connect with these specific, unique moments and accentuate the elements of function that those people need in those moments will be extremely important. Next, we've seen that functional food is no longer enough in its kind of traditionally thought of iteration. So the next wave is going to have to be really creative and engaging, but maybe even more importantly, it's going to have to marry these unique and targeted health benefits with the indulgence and enjoyment that people have come to expect out of even the healthiest of their foods. And the last thing is to pay really close attention to the evolving digital media spaces and personalities as they're continuing to become more and more central to how we engage with and discover the foods that we love, and will undoubtedly continue to play those roles as we clamor to stay close to each other and to these personalities. And that brings us to the end of this section.
Thank you, Samir, for having guided us into this quick ride into this topic. There are a few questions that are coming from our participants, so maybe I can read a few ones since we have still some minutes. So first question, would you recommend owning one single cognitive benefit in a product or creating one that can meld a few together? Question from John. I will leave this answer to you, Samir.
Sure. Yeah, it's a really interesting question. So by the nature of a lot of these ingredients, there's actually going to be some bleed over in terms of benefits. For example, a lot of the mushrooms that are commonly used in nootropics also carry some adaptogenic benefits. And so therefore they'll aid a little bit in stress relief. So really the most important thing, more than the benefits, seems to be being extremely focused in the messaging. And having that focus in messaging is really helping to not only accentuate the efficacy of these products, but also help brands to kind of stand apart in what's quickly becoming quite a crowded market. So if you take the gaming example that we looked at earlier, it's really rooted in a very specific context and speaks to a very specific audience using their language. So it talks about reflexes and it talks about coordination and the things that you would need in those moments. And I think going forward, it feels like that's going to be a much more central part of the storytelling and messaging in this sector, is not so much thinking about the benefits that a lot of these products are going to be able to provide, but thinking about where you can kind of find specific contexts that align with both your audience and your brand.
Okay, sure. Thank you, and thank you, Samir. Another question there from Camila. Are these trends relevant at global level, or are they relevant for specific geographical areas? Maybe I can answer to this one. The analysis that brings to these trends and insights that we presented is made at global level, but of course we measure also the difference of importance of each one of this topic at more specific geographical levels. So for example, by country or by macro area, EMEA, North America, and so on. So I would say that in this case, we didn't provide more information and more detail about these topics, because we have seen that in principle, they have a quite relevant growth that is not particularly specific of a single area. But of course, in our analysis, we have many different ways of measuring the topics. And in a webinar as this one, but in general, anytime that we do reporting of our trends and insights, we select the information that we believe is more important for the depending on the subject. So in this case, you have seen some information related to target audiences, other ones, of course, related to the growth of specific topics. We believe that geography was not so fundamental in this case, because it's really phenomena that have a really important push at the global level. Okay, we still have a question there from Claire. Okay, how important is the communication of the scientific veracity of the benefits of things like adaptogens or nootropics? This is for you, Samir.
Sure, that's a really great question. So obviously consumers want to feel like they're spending their money on things that are real and effective. But we've actually found that people in this space are very open to a level of experimentation that's much higher than maybe a lot of people might expect. As this is still kind of a pretty nascent sector, a lot of the kind of scientific litigation that goes behind these ingredients is still up in the air a little bit. So I think the most important thing for brands in this space right now is to really just preach transparency. So be really clear in how you're communicating what each active ingredient is in your product, and even more so, why you're choosing to include those ingredients. And provide whatever information you can, whether that is in fact scientific studies or results, or something that we see really commonly, especially with natural ingredients, is there's a deep well of historical and anecdotal evidence of their efficacy that spans a lot of different cultural contexts. We see this a lot with adaptogenic ingredients and also a bit with psychedelics. And it seems to be something that consumers actually respond very well to when they're kind of rooted in a historical and cultural context. It provides a lot more strength to the claims that you're creating. And the last thing I would say on this point is I think it's really important to kind of match your storytelling with what you're able to back up. And it's proving to be a really good way to kind of get out in front of consumer expectations and create a cohesive and consistent product that doesn't really confuse consumers one way or the other with your claims.
Okay, clear. And final question from Laura. How do you calculate the popularity index? So every phenomenon is measured by looking at the contents that are published by this community that we follow on social media of more than 300,000 early adopters at global level. This community, by the way, changes through time, because new sources can be scouted and validated by our algorithms. And of course, these sources every day publish new posts about different topics, about everything that they enjoy and like or are fond into. For example, I don't know, design or food or technology, automotive, whatever. And we take all this information to analyze both text and visual parts, so both also computer vision. And to take, for example, nootropic as a single keyword is a keyword for which we see the evolution throughout time, because in certain periods is more mentioned and mentioned together with specific topics or in specific contexts in relation with specific target audiences and so on. So we measure in a relative way, starting from the moment that is a moment of growth in which the algorithm detect that there is something new, a weak signal, for example, related to nootropic. Then we go on with a measurement of the evolution through time of the popularity, and so the volume of mentions of this keyword or this concept in for the profiles that we are listening to. And so we are at the end of our session, and we leave you with some recommendation of things that you can do now. You can listen to the session again, so everybody will receive a link with the recording that also, of course, you can share with your colleagues and collaborators. You can involve your team in a dedicated session if you buy the full report that you find in our website nextatlas.com. You will also have the opportunity of speaking with our insight team to understand more in depth what could be relevant for you, and also to really understand what are your needs in terms of research. Of course, today it was just a quick preview, a quick glance into the topic, but we know that there's much more that can be said. Of course, the report, by the way, is free for Nextatlas corporate subscribers. And finally, if you haven't seen the platform before, you can ask us a demo of the platform. We will be happy to guide you into the platform and to show you the possibilities that the platform can provide for your needs and for your researches. So thank you again, Samir, for this presentation. Thanks to all the participants for all who attended, and we wish you a good day or a good evening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.